welcome to another edition of Local Look, a local town government news program for Concord, Massachusetts. I'm your host, Carlin Reed. Today, my special guests are Linda Miller, the chair of the Concord Planning Board, and Elizabeth Hughes, our town planner. We're going to be talking about the MBTA Overlay District map and warrant article that's coming up for town meeting. And I'm very glad they're here today. Thank you very much, Linda and Elizabeth, for coming. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Carlin. Nice to be here.
Okay, I want to get into the MBA part, but before that, let's find a little bit about yourselves, about your background, what you do on the planning board, and what you do as a town planner. Who wants to go first?
Take it away. I'll volunteer for
Fire
that.
away, Linda.
Since
Okay.
I'm the volunteer,
Okay.
as is. I've lived in Concord for 27 years. I'm not sure if that qualifies me, but in any case, I'm still a newbie. I was on the Finance Committee and was chair of that at one point. I was also on the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund Study group, and I've been on the planning board now this is my 4th year.
Good.
In terms of what the planning board does, I think people identify us with the fact that we review subdivisions as are submitted to us by developers. We also look at any requests on the part of property owners who want to do things with their property that would require a change under the zoning bylaw, and often that is in consultation with the Zoning Board of Appeals, so we would give them our recommendation. But most importantly, we are the area where zoning bylaws are changed, and so we are advisory to town meeting and will bring forth every year changes or potential changes for zoning to be considered by town meeting. And generally those require a 2/3 vote, but under the MBTA Communities Act, that will only be a 50% majority requirement. And that's really the reason that the planning board became involved with the MBT communities, multifamily zoning overlay districts, because we are the committee that looks at zoning, and so we were designated to be the committee that would go to town meeting with a plan to be compliant with this new law that was passed in 2020.
Sure, and I can see you worked very well with Elizabeth Hughes, town planner. Elizabeth, tell me about your job. What the heck does a town planner do?
So a little bit about myself. I've been a municipal planner for 32 years now. I did one stint with Concord as a staff planner for about 7.5 years, and went away to Boxborough for a little over 9 years. I've been back as town planner, so the division manager for the planning division, for a little over 8 years. So I oversee the planning division and the senior planners that work with. We manage, I think it's up to 10 boards and committees in our office. And those, the jurisdictional committees are the planning board with subdivision, site plan, zoning board of appeals, historic districts commission, historical commission, community preservation committee, West Concord Advisory Committee, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, Transportation Advisory Committee. I think that might be it. But
That's a lot under your umbrella, I have to tell you that.
and and then we also assist the planning board with this when you look at adopting or amending the zoning bylaw. In 2018, it was through the planning division and working with a consultant that there was a comprehensive long-range plan committee, so that is 2030 is supposed to be when we have a new plan adopted. So I think probably you'll see in a couple of years we'll be looking to redo that plan. But so the planning division itself oversees support for all those boards and committees, and then does different type of planning studies. We're also looking at the parking requirements in the zoning bylaw, and
you deal with food trucks too, don't you? once in a while?
You know what? It started with the planning board and amending the zoning bylaw to allow food trucks. They were prohibited, and but now, thank goodness, usually the planning division works with the boards and committees to change things or make things happen, and then it moves on to the responsibility of, like right now, Board of Health is really involved with permitting food trucks. So
That's a lot under your wing of sorts.
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, the MBTA is fascinating, but let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about the MBTA Communities Act, its directives, and what obligations the town has for creating a compliance plan. How does that work out? What are we supposed to be doing?
Well, we're supposed to be creating zoning. And of course, zoning is rules and regulations for uses of property and what can be built on it. It doesn't require that anything actually be built, but it gives essentially the guidelines by which property is used and things can be built. In this particular situation of the MBTA Communities Act, it was passed in 2020, and it affects really 177 towns and cities in the generally greater Boston area that are on the commuter rail lines or other mass transit lines coming out of Boston primarily. Of course, Concord is fortunate to have 2 commuter rail stations, and so we are in the thick of it in terms of the requirements. Those requirements are for by right multifamily housing to be allowed in the areas around the train stations. We are required to define a district of at least 50 acres.
Okay.
Half of the land, or 25 acres, needs to be around one or other of the train stations. Within that, there is a density requirement that we zone for a density of 15 units per acre. And in addition to that, the housing that's put in those areas needs to be family friendly, essentially.
Family friendly. Okay.
Family.
Yes,
that
meaning
fair?
the language that gets written can't say that it shall only be over 55.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So it has to provide for families.
Okay.
In addition, there's a capacity requirement, again, over those 50 acres, that there be allowed a capacity of 1,094 units of multifamily housing. How did that odd number
that's
come?
a weird number. Not
That's
1,000 or 2,000,
yeah.
1,094.
Within this, there are many algorithms, shall we say, and one of them is for a community like Concord that has a commuter rail station that you need to zone for 15% of what your 2020 number of housing units was, and that
makes sense.
number popped out.
Sure, that
So
makes sense.
that's-
Okay.
So those are the basic sort of requirements that we are facing in terms of compliance.
Okay, and the flip side of that is, okay, what if we choose not to do a compliance plan? What will happen? Do you have any ideas, Elizabeth?
Oh,
So initially, the legislation that was adopted and signed into law says if you're found not in compliance, you are automatically not eligible for 3 different funding sources through the state. MassWorks program, which funds large-scale infrastructure, such as should the town in the near future need to expand the wastewater treatment plant?
There you go.
Or should the town in the near future have to develop a new water treatment plant? Or should the town need to modify an intersection, such as we just did with Cambridge Turnpike? Those would be projects that are eligible under MassWorks. There's also the Housing Choice, which is an affordable housing funding mechanism, which Concord currently is not one of those communities. And then the last program is the Local Capitals Program, which is a line item funding source in the legislative budget from gaming receipts. 10% of those gaming receipts go to housing authorities. And so Concord has a housing authority,
sure
and
do.
so annual funding that goes to the housing authority would not be appropriated for Concord any longer. However, all the municipal planners knew this was coming. The state has now started adopting different guidelines. MBTA Communities Guidelines is one of them that says we can't strictly say you can't get funding from these other grant programs, like the law says, but we will make it a criteria. If you are not in compliance,
Okay.
you are not,
Yeah.
that's going to be one of the criteria. That started off with housing programs, and the MBTA has now said if you are not in compliance, that will be a criteria for certain transit grants through the MBTA.
And we've used some of those before.
We have used quite a few. So planners in general feel that ultimately it may just be something that the governor will look at is this will be a criteria requirement for any state
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing is that
funding. Yeah, it's
even though it may not say you must do this, it's really in our best interest to do this. That's what I'm hearing from you.
I also think that this does not present any adversity. If you look at our long-range plan that Endeavor, or
Envision
Envision,
Concord,
sorry,
right.
Envision Concord 2030, and the housing production plan, this really does fit in with our goals in terms
Kind of
of
dovetails right into it. Then.
added density in our town centers can add to the vibrancy and vitality of those economic engines for Concord that we truly value. I think as well introducing potentially a diversity of housing types adds to some of the diversity and equity issues that we are facing.
Sure.
In addition, again, density is positive in terms of sustainability and also in terms of transit. I think this could represent less reliance on being auto-centric and add more
Yeah, it does make sense.
density that's positive for the commuter rail lines and for people who just want to live where they can easily walk to.
And not have to shovel snow like too much to get out of their driveway like we have right now.
Particularly at this time of year, we think of that.
Sounds good.
So I'm not sure that there are carrots as well as sticks, and hopefully that being compliant will not just be avoiding a penalty, but maybe positive ultimately
Gotcha.
for Concord.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for the background. I appreciate it. And yeah, it sounds like we got to do this. So let's move on to the actual plan. I call it a compliance plan. I call it a puzzle, trying to figure out where all the pieces fit. It's kind of complicated. And when you look at the warrant article that's going to come before everybody at town meeting, it's 5 pages long, plus the map. It seems like a lot of information. Can you kind of boil that down into something that's a little bit easier for me to understand? What's going on?
Sure. Well, it'd probably be easiest. We can start with the map.
Okay.
The map lays out 5 different sub-districts. The first sub-district is basically Keyes Road and what we're calling Lower Lowell Road. And it would include 100 Main Street, the old Welch's building, 100 Keyes Road, the Rose Hawthorne complex. And then across the street, we have Millbrook Terry, which is Walgreens, Concord Market, and then their office building. That's Sub-District 1. Sub-District 2 is just up what we're calling Upper Lowell Road, which is Concord Oil, Concord Lumber, and then there's just 3 residential houses.
Just south of the bridge, basically?
Yes.
Or east, whatever
Well,
direction.
yeah.
closer to town from the
Yes.
bridge. Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
so it's only those 5 parcels. Some people have asked, why have you included those 3 homes in that sub-district 2? The state guidelines for compliance are approximately 28 pages. They have, if you think the zoning bylaw is complex, you should, see the guidelines and what goes into developing a compliant zoning and map.
Okay.
They require that any district has to be a minimum of 5 acres.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So that's zoning sub-district 2.
2, yep.
Okay.
Zoning sub-district 3 is at the corner of Sudbury Road and Thoreau. It includes like the gas station and a 2-family next to it, Thoreau Gardens, and then across the street on Thoreau up to Thoreau Court. And the 5-acre minimum, the state has established excluded lands. It includes wetlands and floodplains, municipal land, state land, nonprofit, so Concord Academy, all of our museums, all of that can't be included in that calculation. We actually got support through the Mass Housing Partnership, provided us a grant to hire an outside consultant to first establish this geographic information system map because of the back-of-house compliance modeling that goes into that. And they set us up, and then our town's GIS team has been working with the planning board on making modifications to make sure that we're compliant.
But you've also had some public input on where those boundaries should shift, especially
Definitely.
in sub-district 3, but at the other ones as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The planning board started off much
Yeah.
larger, and through those conversations, things got shifted and,
Sure.
and redirected.
Good.
The 4th district is out in West Concord. It's Baker Ave, where the current Novo comprehensive permit is being proposed.
That's the 40B that's currently
Correct.
pending. Got it. Okay.
Yep. Across Assabet River, where Concord Park is, and then across Neshoba Brook, where Junction Village is. So that makes up District 4. And District 5 is the little business district on Elm Street that goes from the Chinese food restaurant that was there up to
Yeah, how are you going to describe this? Well, it's
Yeah.
the building here, here, here,
Yes.
here.
Up to there's a little office building just past the gas station on Elm Street. So and the Paparazzi and Best Western. So that's
And
in
that's
District
not
5.
directly opposite Kerem Shalom. It's down the street a little ways from that,
It's
right?
down the street a little ways, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, most people don't even realize there's a little office building. So what goes into that compliance model and the mapping, besides the guidelines stating that Concord has to have zoning, which people are probably tired of hearing about the cookie plate metaphor, but it works so well. Zoning established, the map establishes the area that this by right zoning will be allowed. And it has to be a certain size, and you have to be able to fit 1,094 cookies on that plate. And depending how things shift and the words that go behind this map, you can go 3 stories, you have to have setbacks, you have to have parking. Some places will be taller and some places will be smaller, but you don't have to put any cookies on that plate. So the zoning just says the rules, and you had asked this earlier, what's going to be built? We don't know. Property rights, people still have rights to either build under this zoning if it passes, or build under what's currently in the zoning bylaw. So they get to you get to
choose.
decide, and some people may not. But currently, this map and the compliance model, we're required to have 1,094 units be able to be built if there was nothing there. And this map says we have 1,198.
That's a little more than 1,094. Good. It works.
Not by much. We have to have at least a minimum of 50 acres. This map represents 84 acres.
Okay.
Which some people said, well, that's quite a bit more than 50. Well, 50% of that area has to be within the half mile of one or both of the train
sure.
stations. We're currently about 53 acres. So
Okay.
that, and the density requirement is 15 units per acre. And that's an average. So you
Okay.
take all 5 districts, you plug in the setbacks, and you plug in the parking, and you plug in, there's an open space requirement.
And this is part of the compliance model?
Yep.
And that
Yeah.
you've shown me a chart in the past of,
Right.
of the various setbacks, and it's organized, within the warrant article, it's organized by each sub-district, has
Correct.
all these little categories.
Dimensional requirements.
Dimensional requirements, okay.
The same
Got
as
it.
the current zoning bylaw has a dimensional table
Right.
that sets minimum lot size is in there.
Sure.
So the compliance model takes all that, and on average, we're at 22.8 acres, units per acre.
Okay.
So some of the smaller parcels, they might be down to 14, and so the larger parcels, like Baker Ave, is up to like 22. So on average,
Okay.
this map with the words that go with it is currently in compliance.
Okay, so the warrant article is 5 pages. It has the dimensional requirements, and it repeats it per sub-district. It also has the map that shows roughly where the locations are, and that's what's going to be at town meeting. Do you have any idea of what kind of homes, what types of homes are going to be built, or could not going to be built? What types of homes could be built with these in these areas with the compliance model? What could go in there?
So currently, the zoning states the dimensional requirements that have to be met. So your front yard setbacks, your side yard setbacks, which is similar to what's in the zoning bylaw now. You can go 3 stories, 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. All of that goes into, when somebody figures out what they want to build. The other requirement in the zoning bylaw is that while this might be by right, you still have to go through site plan review with the planning board.
Okay, site plan review. I want to talk to you about that. What is site plan review? How does that work?
So, site plan, site plan review is, it's a current requirement in the zoning bylaw. There's criteria that an applicant has to meet. I think it's A through H, dealing with, the planning board reviews a project for sight and sound buffers, neighborhood compatibility, massing, lighting, landscaping, drainage, vehicle and pedestrian access, sustainability,
Safety is a big
um,
factor.
whether there's added.
Safety is a big factor? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So where the driveways is, is the driveway safe? Is it also
Can the trash truck turn around in that kind of radius? That was
Circulation,
one of
yes.
one of your areas. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on the size of the site.
Okay.
And so all of those criteria, an application comes in, they have to have a site plan, they have to explain, how they're meeting these criteria.
So it's not a slam dunk. There's still stuff.
There's a
still
public
requirements.
hearing.
Yeah.
The notification to abutters.
Sure. So the public will have an opportunity to give input on the particular development
Correct.
that's created under this compliance plan. Okay.
But by right as well means that that application can't be denied, but there can be conditions. And the conditions would be what the planning board, the planning division, and the input from the community would make it acceptable to Concord. Yes.
Okay.
As well as each site plan gets reviewed by police, fire, water and sewer, engineering, CMLP, natural
That's
resources,
7
health.
departments you've labeled so far. That
So there's 8. There's there's
Well,
yeah.
health.
There's building, health, natural resources, police, fire, engineering, water and sewer, and CMLP.
Okay.
So
So they give
they
input
all
as well.
they give all input.
Good.
So as Linda said, while the planning board can't just outright deny a by right use, they can condition it to mitigate impacts.
And importantly, there are a number of aspects that are considered in every particular development.
Yes. And in addition, under the MBTA requirements, there is no requirement that we put in infrastructure to anticipate any of this building.
Yeah, that's something we've been talking about in town about that.
And that, therefore, once an application is made, if one is, at that point, a developer could have responsibility for various infrastructure for the project. It not necessarily be that the town is required to support all of that.
Okay, all right. We've talked about the overlay map. We've talked about the 5 sub-districts, some of the compliance plan model. Other aspects? What else?
You had asked about, what would this look like?
Right.
And there's multifamily, that is would be considered compliant with the MBTA zoning already in the
Concord
community.
now? Like what?
Yeah. So you have 50 Stowe Street, which is Emerson Annex.
Okay.
That's 20 units per acre. You have, what is this? Conant Street, 95 Conant, which is 23 units per acre.
Okay.
We have some really great mixed-use examples, which, Com Ave is, 85 Com Ave, which is 54 units per acre.
Right.
So,
So we have some examples already in town.
A lot of these examples people see around town but don't necessarily think there's multifamily. In addition, I think it's important to remember that multifamily often is considered sort of workforce housing, and what people now refer to as the missing middle. So I think that that's more of what this is addressing than people's envision of some kind of skyscraper going up in Concord.
Yeah, those skyscrapers in Concord.
It also is really, the MBTA Communities Act is really focused on market rate housing. It's not attuned as much to affordability or affordable housing.
But there is a component of affordability in this. How does that work?
A town can elect to put a requirement in for affordable housing. However, it needs to meet, that requirement needs to meet an economic feasibility analysis that is, will be reviewed by the state.
An economic feasibility analysis, is that already been started?
Yeah, so the guidelines say that a community can require affordable housing at 10%. If you want to go above 10%, you have to do this economic feasibility analysis, which looks at market and demographics and all the different factors that go into developing new construction in the community.
To make sure that the developer can make enough money so that's economically feasible for the developer to actually build this construction.
Correct. So
That's the feasibility component, right?
Right. So the state didn't want communities to put in an affordable housing requirement that basically made it impossible to build. So
Made it not impossible, but not economically feasible to build.
correct. So let's say the requirement was 50% had to be affordable. Well, you're building 4 units, and 2 have to be affordable. The cost to buy land, buy materials, the labor market. You put that into it. Forget about whether the developer's making a profit. He's probably going to lose money.
Right.
So the state did not want communities to use that as a way to basically circumvent compliance.
We need all types of housing, that's clear.
So we did also receive another grant through the state, through the community planning grants.
Tell me about that.
So it's a community planning grant. It's an open grant program through the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which we just HLC makes
HLC,
makes
got
it
it.
easy.
HLC, got
Used to be DHCD, but they had to go and change the name. But so we received a $25,000 grant to actually hire a consultant who does this type of economic feasibility analysis, because again, there's very specific requirements and guidelines that the state has mandated
Gotcha.
for the conducting of that analysis. So that contract's being executed. The planning board, as part of the warrant, has incorporated
A tiered structure.
a tiered structure.
I saw that, yeah.
Right. So that tiered structure is going to go for 20% if the economic feasibility analysis says nope. Let's shoot for 15%.
Go to 15%, got it.
So the
That's smart.
right. So the consultant is reviewing 20 and 15%.
Good.
And if neither are feasible, then the town
still have
can
the
elect
10%,
10%.
Got it.
So that's why it adds to the 5 pages of the bylaw itself, but that's why.
Okay, well, that'll be available as a handout at town meeting. And it's also on your website right now, too, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes.
we're hopeful that the consultant will be able to finish their analysis before the public hearing, which is March
13th or 12th?
March 12th.
March 12th.
And remember that date kind of changed back and
Yeah.
forth on it.
Yeah, so it's Tuesday, March 12th, with a snow date of Wednesday, March 13th.
Okay.
So we're hopeful, because at that point, then, people can be informed of whether 20 or 15%, and then,
Sure. Okay.
but definitely by town meeting.
Well, I
we
know
will
that
know.
the MBTA has taken a big chunk of your time. I also know it's not the only thing that you're doing, that you're working on. You have a whole other realm of projects involving the 40Bs, the other planning board articles that you're offering at town meeting, your regular job, which is to approve different variances and give site conditions when people come to you saying, "Hey, I want to add an addition or get in these areas." So you've been very busy, and I really do think this is wonderful. Is there anything last minute that we haven't covered that you want to cover now? Because I think we've pretty much touched on the topics.
Yeah. The only other thing I will add is that we also got another grant. We've been busy in the planning division.
Good.
Through the Mass Housing Partnership again, to hire a consultant to work with the planning board to develop site plan rules and regs for the MBTA community zoning. So that will be very specific regulations that assist, property owners or developers on, this is the requirement for lighting. This is the requirement for, vehicle and pedestrian circulation. This is the requirement if you have more than, proposing more than 10 units, you have a dedicated play area. And so the board's currently working with a consultant, and we hope to have at least a final draft of that done by town meeting. So that, should this pass, that will be teed up right after town meeting to move forward. Because even though town meeting may, should town meeting adopt this, it does still require, it's a zoning bylaw, still requires it go to the Attorney General's office for review.
Right, all the bylaws, we'll have to do that after.
Yep, and it also requires approval from the state. And so right now, I am submitting all of this, since it's been finalized and it's on the warrant, to the state for a pre-approval review or pre-analysis.
Gotcha. You'd mentioned that during one of your meetings about
Yeah,
they
so
can give you a preliminary look on
yeah,
how you
and,
feel
and whether
what's
they
gonna happen.
whether they think you're
Yeah.
in compliance or not. So I'm hopeful that review can also be done before town meeting.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, would be nice, because if certain tweaks need to be made, the board can make that as part of their motion on the floor
Well,
of town
as a
meeting.
member of the Finance Committee, thank you for getting the grants. Appreciate that
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
Keep it up. We like that sort of
That's-
stuff. And also, thank you very much for all the information that you've given us today and the time that you've spent doing this. The last chance, anything else that you want to add to this?
No? Just
Okay, all right.
ask people to come to town meeting.
And vote and do all the things that they're supposed to do. That sounds
Come to
good.
the public
Thank you.
hearing.
And
If-
the public hearing.
I can't imagine any citizen, not being informed about this, given what, Linda and the board and that we've been doing, but
But there's always room for questions.
Yes.
Correct.
Good, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate this. It's been an absolutely wonderful time chatting with you and learning more about this and seeing the pictures and getting the information about it. That's been very, very special. I really appreciate that time.
terrific.
Thank you.
This is, that's about enough, I think, on the MBTA compliance plan. This is Carlin Reed. I'm your host. It's been another wonderful episode of Local Look, your local town news program for Concord, Massachusetts. I forgot to mention earlier, we're filming this in a really nice special location, the trustees' room of the Concord Free Public Library here in Concord. And I really do appreciate the library allowing us to have this special studio space. Thank you all very much for coming to look at the other episodes that we've done and pay attention to what we're doing here. Make sure you come to town meeting and so that you learn more about the MBTA compliance plan and the other fine work that the planning board and the town planner, Elizabeth Hughes, planning board chair Linda Miller, have been doing for the town. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Goodbye.